Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast. It's Monday here for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. We're back from the bye week, and the Steelers are ready to spring into action this week against the Cleveland Browns. We're going to get you ready for the week here as we have lots of different angles to cover coming out of the Steelers bye week at 3-1 sitting atop the AFC North. As always, this podcast is presented by FanDuel and brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates, who also do workers' compensation. When you've been hurt on the job, who decides when you're better? Who decides when your treatment's over? Who decides when your benefits are over? The answer might surprise you. It's the insurance company's doctors. How does that make you feel? The answer is not great. Call Edgar Snyder Associates today at 1-800-94-EDGAR. They'll fight for the workers' compensation rights you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Ray, we will get to the results of this weekend in the AFC North in a bit, but you and I wrote about similar, or basically the same groups for the Steelers, and that's the tight ends and the run, and then how they contribute to this team in some of their jumbo packages. Darnell Washington, Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, even Connor Hayward being weapons there. The Steelers tight ends aren't racking up big numbers in the passing game, but they have become real weapons for the run game and how they're used. My film study went over how they use what's called a wham block when a tight end is basically set in motion right before the snap, and that motion is used for them to target a specific defender to block, and that kind of offsets the defense and gives the offense a little bit of an advantage in the run game, and that helps spark their success against the Vikings. What have you seen from this tight end group that has either impressed you or disappointed you so far this season?
Yeah, I think Darnell Washington, his usage, right? I mean, he's played the most of any tight end so far, and I don't know if I would have predicted that when the season began. So, it's a little bit out of skew because of what happened against the Vikings. He had 48 snaps in that game, and, Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth had 13 and 15 respectively in that game. So that might skew it a little bit, but, as I wrote, Chris, that was really good for them. I thought that was their most complete offensive game against the Vikings. I think they might have found something there, and I think they're not going to hesitate to go back to it. And then, I was thinking about this. What does this mean for Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth? Because to me, they're different players, but they're similar enough, right? They're pass-catching tight ends who are willing run blockers. And the Steelers had to go to Spencer Anderson and Darnell Washington to really get that run game going. So, you mentioned in your article they're doing a fine job, but the fact of the matter is they just, they played sparingly in that Vikings game. So, to me, that's the next question that has to be answered. And if they can't run out of their basic 12 personnel, then they're going to have to go to that jumbo package more. And it's kind of like an unintended consequence of a good victory against the Vikings, but we're sitting here and we're talking about two of their highest paid offensive players not really seeing the field in that football game.
I think that's the crazy thing here is that you look at how this offense was built, and you think, oh, they're going to throw a lot to Pat Freiermuth because they don't have a pure number 2 wide receiver, or they got Jonnu Smith, they're going to involve him. No, it's been using these guys in pinches to get you certain wins here, and also the usage of it. Connor Hayward was used quite a bit against the Vikings, but I think part of it is these guys. Arthur Smith sees these guys as weapons in multiple ways. He's not just looking to line you up and say, hey, run this route here and toast this linebacker or safety that's going to match up with you. A lot of it is, hey, you know what? This team, if we can neutralize their defensive line, or we can set off this one edge rusher with a wham block that kind of takes him out of the play, that can be the thing that springs the run game. And one thing I noted was Dallas Turner, who's a second-year first-round pick for Minnesota, a guy that they drafted along with J.J. McCarthy in the first round in 2024. He's a very good edge rusher, a young edge rusher that everyone's looking at in the NFL. They teed off on him. They would say it was everybody: Freiermuth, Hayward, Smith, and Washington, all through wham blocks where they're just coming down the line, and their job is just take him out of the play. And you don't have to crush him, just seal him. And that creates the crease for a Kenneth Gainwell to cut up. And I think it's important that if the Steelers can find rhythm there, Ray, because, at the same time, that was an impressive rushing performance, but they still rank next to last in rushing yards in the NFL. And that's something that they absolutely want to change going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the way they played against the Vikings is the way they want to play. That's Arthur Smith's, identity in other places he's been. That's the way Andy Weidel and this front office want to play. And I get it. The NFL is a week-to-week game. And, if they hone in on the Browns defense and they think they could take advantage of their secondary, they're going to develop a game plan around that. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. Their corners are actually really good. It's going to be interesting to see what they come up with, because the Browns are a very good defense. They're a well-rounded defense that's, strong on the edges, and they're pretty good up front as well. So, to me, I asked Pat Meyer about this last week, Chris, and basically I said, is this jumbo package, can this become a staple for you, or is it just an occasional thing? And he basically said, listen, we saw some weaknesses in the Vikings defense where we thought we could take advantage of them. Perhaps one of the issues was Dallas Turner. That's probably one of the things he was talking about. Mm-hmm. But you just get to thinking about it, Chris. It was so effective. If you really do want to develop that as your identity, that's who you should be, and you should make other teams react to you, right? So I get it. The whole thing about week-to-week game planning. I understand that, but at a certain point, you got to know who you are as a football team. And like I said, I thought that Vikings game was their best offensive game of the season, even though they didn't get their highest scoring output. To me, that's the way they want to play football.
I agree. I think that's the way they want to play football, and so much of it is identity when we talk about that, right? And we talked about that for years with Matt Canada. We've talked about that, since they've gotten Arthur Smith, and really since Ben Roethlisberger, the Killer Bees era ended, right? Because Ben Roethlisberger, was able to get the offense going in the air for a bit in 2020, but then in 2021, when he was old, Ben Roethlisberger, it wasn't the same. They still didn't really have a run game outside of Najee Harris just plowing forward through just hordes of defenders because they had no offensive line. And so they've been looking for that offense, to the offensive identity. And, Aaron Rodgers certainly makes smart plays. DK Metcalf is a big playmaker. We saw it with that 80-yard touchdown that he had, against the Vikings. But the thing that they've been investing in, the offensive line, with Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, they want them to form that force. And while they're figuring it out, Troy Fautanu just has 4 starts at right tackle. Same thing for Broderick Jones at left tackle. Having other guys that are solid vets to help in that direction, I think, is another way to give them a boost while they're figuring things out. And you see Darnell Washington blocking at the point of attack. He's a huge asset. And then you throw in a Spencer Anderson, like you said, a swing tackle who can just help you here and there. Those type of things can be tough matchups if defenses don't have the personnel to match up with that.
Yeah, they like Spencer Anderson. Pat Meyer was talking about him. He basically said that was a way to get him on the football field. And you don't really hear that a lot about, backup offensive linemen. But obviously what they did is they played him, at the expense of Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith. To me, the thing that I want to know, and we haven't seen it, we did not see it in the first 3 games. I want to see if they could just block with their basic personnel. Can they run block? Can they have a good game like they had against the Vikings without having to go to the jumbo package? Because I do think eventually, Chris, if you're going to be a well-rounded offense,
yes,
2 of your better playmakers have to be on the field more often than that. Mm-hmm. So that to me is what I want to see against the Browns. Maybe it's a mix of both personnel packages. Maybe it's not 48 for Darnell Washington, but maybe it's 28, and you get Pat back up there, you get Jonnu Smith back up there as well. But Arthur Smith has a tough job. It's been tough on him to spread the ball around to as many targets as he has. They finally got DK on track a little bit, and now I think everyone wants to know, okay, let's see that with Pat Freiermuth, and let's see that with Jonnu Smith, and we'll see if Art can dial that up this week against the Browns.
Certainly. And speaking of that game against the Browns, FanDuel, who presents this podcast, gives you the opening odds for the week right now. The Steelers open as 5.5-point favorites over the Cleveland Browns. And remember, that game is at home for the Steelers, so that's another boost for them there. They're also, the Steelers money line set at -245. Browns money line set at +200, with the over/under currently at 38.5 points. Let's talk about the AFC North next, because they all lost this weekend, and the Ravens especially lost badly, and that could put the Steelers in an advantageous situation going the rest of the way. Let's talk about that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast on Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo, stick with us. Be right back. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. This show is also brought to you by Olivian Numismatic Rarities. If you're looking to diversify your playbook beyond the stock market, right here in Pittsburgh's Shadyside neighborhood, Olivian Numismatic Rarities helps investors and collectors build wealth with rare coins, paper money, and precious metals. Whether you're stacking gold or silver, building a tangible asset portfolio, or selling an inherited collection, ONR brings integrity and expertise to every transaction. Stop by their premier gallery at 5833 Ellsworth Avenue in Shadyside, or learn more at onrcoins.com. That's onrcoins.com, or call 412-900-COIN today. We're also brought to you by Goldberg, Persky & White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky & White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. Ray, there's a lot of consultation needed for AFC North fans this week, as all three of the AFC North teams lost this weekend. The Browns losing with their Europe game before they played the Steelers. They lost 21-17. The Vikings got a late touchdown that gave them just ahead of Dylan Gabriel's first start. The Bengals predictably lost to the Lions, though I do think it bodes well for them. They scored 21 fourth-quarter points to make it at least a closer game than it appeared for most of it. They lost 37-24 to the Bengals. But the biggest story is the Ravens not just losing, but getting utterly destroyed by the 1-3 Houston Texans, who are now 2-3, 44-10. Granted, no Lamar Jackson, no Marlon Humphrey, no Roquan Smith. Madubuike's out for the year. Travis Jones, their other defensive tackle. They are a banged up team. But man, things look rough in Baltimore for John Harbaugh right now.
Yeah, I saw Trey Essex tweeted this last night or this morning. I forget which, but he said Victory Monday. It kind of feels like a Victory Monday for the Steelers, even though they're on a bye week, right? Like everything that could have gone right for them over the weekend went right. But yeah, Chris, you're right about the Ravens. Listen, they're going to get some of those players back, especially on defense. I think, they're down some of their key guys right now, and that's obviously hurting them and their product. To me, I'm not counting them out for the division. I still think they can come back and give the Steelers all they want in the division race. But when you start 1-4, you pretty much take yourself out of being a top seed. Now, I know the Bills lost last night. There's no more undefeated teams in the NFL. But, even if the Ravens do win this division, what are they going to be, a 3, a 4 seed? And we've seen with the Ravens how important it is to have home field advantage. So, that to me is what I take away from this past weekend. Yeah, you can still come back and maybe be a factor in the division. I don't think you're going to be a factor for a top seed in the conference, though. Yeah,
I think that's the thing here, is that now the Ravens are going to have to battle back to catch the Steelers right now. The Ravens at 1-4, the Steelers at 3-1. If the Steelers handle their business and beat the Browns and the Bengals in these next 2 weeks, the Ravens have to play the Rams this upcoming week. The Rams, no slouches themselves. They're pretty tough right now. They're sitting at 3-2, but they've also had some tough games on their hand. If Matt Stafford walks into Baltimore, lights them up too, and all of a sudden they're staring at 1-5, and the Steelers are staring at 1-5, that's a 4-game difference for a Ravens team that's still going to be dealing with injuries. Lamar Jackson's not guaranteed to come back right after the bye. They're hoping he does, but that's a rough spot to be in, and it's going to put the onus that they will need to win almost out. Like I think they have 10 games after the bye. They would need to go like 9-1 or something like that to even have a chance, I think, to win the division, unless the Steelers have an epic collapse, but which after last year, could happen. But I look at the things that the Ravens are doing right now, and you brought this up before the show, but they're just giving up an insane amount of points on defense. And yes, there's injuries, but man, you'd think that this defense would have been able to find some answers this early in the season.
Yeah, even before guys like Roquan Smith and Madubuike went out of the lineup, they were among the worst offensive teams in the NFL when they were playing. So, I think the stat was they're on pace to give up 35.4 points per game, which would shatter the NFL record, which was set last year by the Carolina Panthers, who gave up 31.4 points per game. Now, listen, I know they played a tough schedule early. I know they're eventually going to get some of these guys back, but Chris, when you're giving up almost 36 points per game over a 5-game stretch, that's not a fluke. That's who you are as a football team. And I'm sure John Harbaugh, they got to get ready for the Rams this week, but he cannot wait for this bye week to get here because they got a ton to fix on that side of the ball.
Absolutely. Right now, for a perspective, at 35.4 points a game is 601.8 points if you multiply that rate out for 17 games. That'd be the first ever time someone gave up 600 points in a season. And granted, probably not going to happen. I did a quick search through the first 5 games of the season. This is the 7th time since 2000 that a team has given up 177 points or more. The other 6 teams that did it before, they got a little bit better as the year went on because they didn't end up giving up 600 points by the end of the season. But each of them, the Bills in 2002 finished 8-8. The Dolphins in 2019, 5-11, Cowboys in 2020, 6-10, Titans in 2012, 6-10, Broncos in 2023, 8-9, and the Giants in 2013, 7-9. All teams that gave up as many or more points than the Ravens did in these first 5 games. The Ravens got some explaining to do. And granted, I think one thing that they have on their side is they do have an MVP quarterback. And if he can come back healthy this year, then maybe they can claw their way back. But Ray, I think this puts the ball in the Steelers' court a little bit here because we all counted out the Cleveland Browns before the season got it. And you and I talked about the Bengals going into this season. They needed Joe Burrow to be elite, and he's out for 3 months. So they're pretty much out of the picture. It puts the ball in the Steelers' court to say, like, hey, if we handle our business and build up a big lead, we can just be the front runners for the AFC North this year.
Yeah, and it's a great spot to be in, Chris, just knowing the way the Steelers have struggled in the playoffs really since 2017, since their last that's what I consider their last really good playoff team. How important would it be to get a home game? I know they had a home game against the Browns.
Wasn't a real one.
Wasn't a real one. But you just think about the road games they've lost, right? In Baltimore, a tough place to play. They get their doors blown off. In Buffalo, again, tough place to play. In Kansas City, I mean, you're going up against the elite of the elite when those teams were humming and they were AFC contenders year after year after year. How nice would it be not to be a 6 or a 7 seed, but actually go in as a 2, a 3, or a 4, right? And then you have people coming to you. You set yourself up for success. That's kind of how I look at this. You're in the driver's seat now. I'm not saying you have to go 13-4, but if you can get to 11-6, maybe 12-5, you're going to have a shot, I think, to be a 2 or a 3 seed. And as we know, that's very important come playoff time.
It is. You get that home game, and then you also get that advantageous home game because if you're the 2 seed, you play the 7 seed. Like, looking at the standings right now in the conference, the 7th seed, if all things started today, would be the Patriots. And so, and granted, the Steelers right now would also be the 3rd seed. They get the Broncos, but you're talking about the wild card teams right now, which are the Jaguars, the Broncos, and the Patriots. But it's also super early because right now, if the playoffs started today, because Monday Night Football hasn't happened, the Chiefs would be out of the playoffs, and that's probably not going to happen. And the Colts would be the number 1 seed in the NFL at 4-1 right now. So some other things have to shake out. But again, there is a stage set for the Steelers, and they've said it themselves. You and I talked about the importance of at least winning 2 games in those first 4. They won 3. Now they put themselves here where imagine if they had just dropped that Patriots game or the Jets game or any one of the 3 games that they won and they're 2-2, it's not so much of a happy feeling coming out of the box. Like, oh man, what if you had just done a little bit more? Now you're sitting there saying, hey, wait a minute. Everything's in front of us. Let's handle our business. You got the Browns this week, the Bengals on a short week, which they still have never beaten a AFC North team on the road on Thursday Night Football, and since that whole thing started in 2006 of Thursday Night Football. But if you handle your business against those teams, then you give yourself some grace because after those 2 teams, you got the Packers coming to Pittsburgh, the Colts coming to Pittsburgh, and they're again the number 1 seed in the AFC right now. You go to Los Angeles to play the Chargers, and when it gets to late November, you get a run of Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, Lions, and then the Ravens again late for the last game of the season. You need to build up some space that you can lose some tough games, but not give up ground, a lot of ground because you get yourself such a big lead early on.
Yeah, I could see the path. Like I think it's legit talk now. The Steelers actually have a real shot to win the AFC North. Chris, if they get to 5-1, I'll be a true believer. Because if they get to that point, that will prove to me that they're not going to lose a game they're not supposed to at home against the Browns, or on a short week on the road against the Bengals. I'm sorry. I watched a little bit of that game against the Lions yesterday. I know it was close at the end, but at one point, Chris, it was 28-3.
Yeah.
And they've got real issues on both sides of the football. So to me, Steelers, take care of your business. If you really are that team, you think this is going to contend for a division, you've got to be 5-1 coming out of this stretch.
I feel you there. We'll be covering all of that leading into this week. In fact, we'll be in the facility today as the Steelers get started a little early this week with it being a bye week or coming off of a bye week. So we'll be in the facility today. Mike Tomlin talks Tuesday, and then we'll be at the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practices. Get all your coverage on the Steelers as they get ready for their Week 6 showdown with the Cleveland Browns in Pittsburgh this Sunday. We'll be covering that as well. Get all your coverage from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Subscribe to the Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. And remember to subscribe to this podcast, the North Shore Drive podcast, wherever you get podcasts or on YouTube. We'll be back later this week with more, and check out all the daily content from our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.